Hello, this is Jaxy636 here, and I'm here to talk to you about the Aesop Rock record, The Impossible Kid. Aesop Rock is a American rapper and producer from Portland, Oregon. He started releasing material around the mid to late 90s and was really big in the underground hip-hop scene until he got picked up by a label and released his album in 2001 called Labor Days, which broke through the Billboard charts and really breakthrough success. You get it, you know. Aesop Rock here is known as one of the greats in the modern abstract hip-hop rap. Aesop is a rapper that has had more than 20 years in the field. He dropped this record after about a couple years of being on hiatus, so I'm here to tell you about it, because this is a thing I do on my channel now. So I have 5 separate categories I like to grade albums in. Those 5 categories being the songwriting and lyrics, the production, how the tracks stand out on their own, how the tracks cooperate as a whole, and the uniqueness of the album. So we'll be looking at those, and each category will receive a score out of 10, and those will contribute to the final total overall score of the album. Let's get right into it. So let's go right into the first category, songwriting and lyrics, which I think is this album's strongest point. Aesop Rock has always been known for his very abstract and metaphorical and complex lyrics, with some critics even saying that there's too complex and they're too abstract, to the point where they suspect and accuse Aesop of not even really saying anything and just pretending that it's abstract. I disagree. If you read the lyrics of any of these albums and take a couple minutes to decipher them and look into them, you can almost always find something special hidden within them, and that's what really shows how good of a lyricist Aesop himself really is. And being a rapper and the kind of flow that he showcases on this album and all his other works, he really has a fast flow, so he's got a lot of stuff to say in a lot of short bursts, which is really impressive. This album still has Aesop's trademark, distinct, unique lyrical style. His flows are non-stop and intense. The words he used come out of left field, and behind it all is a very strong structure and a very clear focus and purpose. The topics he talks about are interesting too, like in Mystery Fish, he talks about his experiences living on an alley in San Francisco. In Rings, where he talks about his regret on failing to become a visual artist rather than a musical one. In Shrunk, where he talks about his time and his distrust while he's with his therapist. And, of course, Kirby, where he just rhymes about his cat. It's all really good stuff. It's definitely its strong suit. It's always been Aesop's strong suit. I'm giving the songwriting and the lyrics 9 out of 10 for their complexity and their intensity, which will add 2 points to the overall score. So right along. Next up is the production for this album. And all the tracks on this album were produced by Aesop himself. All of them are pretty much good for the most part. Mystery Fish, Dorks, Get Out of the Car, all these tracks have a very distinct and unique instrumentation and production put behind them that really set them apart from the rest of the tracks on this album. Some tracks are more distinct than others in their instrumentation, but they're still really good. Aesop is more than proficient, I'd say, at production and mixing. The mixing on the vocals obviously have a lot of thought put into them. At no point did I feel like the vocals were too loud or too quiet, or the instruments and the beats were too loud or too quiet. The scratching by DJ Zone is featured in a couple of these tracks, but the performances on Mystery Fish and Kirby are particularly nice. I'd say about a third of this album has near perfect instrumentation, the other third having pretty good instrumentation, and the last third, which is mostly showcasing the last area of the album, it really kind of blends and fades together into this kind of synthy mesh, but it's still really good overall. For the production on this album, I'd give it about a 7 out of 10. Which will contribute 1.5 points to the total overall score. And now next up we have how the tracks stand individually. Are these tracks good enough to be listened to on their own and outside the context of listening to the album from start to finish? Well, I'd have to say that these tracks succeed pretty well at being able to pull their own weight and be listened to individually, as well as synergize together and contribute to the album as a whole. Most of these tracks feel like they have enough strength put into them to be able to be released as a single, and yet the album doesn't even feel like it's a greatest hits album that's just a mixtape of Aesop Rock songs. They all have some kind of connection to each other, in the instrumentation at least, in some way. Most of these tracks focus on giving you a window into Aesop's psyche, and while they do feel varied, they still connect to each other. And I think it may be the style of the beats and the style that Aesop delivers these tracks and these flows overall. But at the album's lowest point, which I'd say is around the last few tracks of the album, they kind of all fade into an unmemorable mesh, which is a shame, really. I'm going to give 7 out of 10 for the individual tracks, and that will contribute 1.5 points to the total overall score. which brings us to how the tracks work together as a whole. And again, I'd have to say they do that pretty well. Even the tracks that focus on standing out from the rest of the album still contribute at least a little bit to the overall project of looking into Aesop's general mind. Tracks like Shrunk and Kirby and Dorks and Get Out of the Car and Mystery Fish, really all the tracks that are good and the tracks that I like from this album, which is about, you know, I'd say 3/4 of the entire album overall, focus on that in a very specific way. This is a hard thing for an album to do. Most albums either feel like they're different variations of the same song, or they're just a mixtape of different songs that happen to be made by the same artist. This album does it right. This album gets an 8 out of 10 for the tracks having so much synergy together, which will contribute 1.5 points to the overall score. And finally, there's the uniqueness category. What does this album do differently? Does it have a distinct voice? Does it do things that other albums in this same genre don't do? Does it have something that the other albums don't have? Now, Aesop Rock has an incredibly unique style of lyricism and flow, and the general production that this album features is able to present that unique voice in a pretty nice way. Aesop Rock is able to deliver his flows over beats that he's produced himself, and while some of these beats may not be his best work, most of them really hit right on what they were trying to accomplish. Aesop's unique lyrical style and Aesop's unique personality are what's going to give this album a 7 out of 10 in the uniqueness category, giving the final score another 1.5 points. To some, this may just sound like another hip-hop record with another abstract lyricist, but the further you get into this album, the more sparks and glimmers of something special really do shine through. And so that means that the total score of this album will add up to a cool 8 out of 10. Aesop Rock did a great job here. This album is accessible enough to be able to lure in new fans, and I am 100% sure that this album is going to completely satisfy his previous fans. If you like hip-hop in general, I'm sure you'll find at least something to appreciate or enjoy out of this album. Okay, I think that's it. This is Jax3636 signing off. See you in the next review.